Welcome back to The Explainer. Listen, when the ground literally falls out from under your company, those generic feel-good motivational posters just aren't going to cut it. You need a lifeline. So today, we are unpacking a highly structured, step-by-step blueprint to diagnose and ultimately rescue a business that's staring down a sudden, major crisis. Let's just address the elephant in the room right off the bat, okay? What are the ultimate stakes here? How does a business actually survive a literal war or an overnight devastating economic crash? The framework we're digging into today was born out of an extreme scenario, a sudden outbreak of conflict and the massive economic shockwave that instantly hit small and medium enterprises. But honestly, the lessons here apply to absolutely any catastrophic market freeze that threatens to wipe out your life's work in a flash. To answer that massive question, we're looking at a very specific crisis methodology created by NIRMAKO. He's a business coach and the CEO of l-XCELERATOR. After watching countless businesses just hit a total brick wall, Makowski built this strategy that literally treats your business like a patient in need of intensive, structured rehab. It's an incredibly pragmatic approach because it takes pure panic completely out of the equation and replaces it with deliberate, calculated action.
So let's jump right into part one, the diagnosis, and identifying your psychological response. Because look, before we can prescribe a treatment for the company, you have to look in a psychological mirror. You can't steer a ship if you're blinded by stress. Makowski points out that under severe pressure, owners usually default to one of three states. The first natural response is fight. This is where you absolutely refuse to pause operations. You aggressively push forward despite the total chaos around you. These leaders take all that frustration, the deep anger, the anxiety, and they just channel it directly into continuous and relentless activity. They're making calls, they're planning, they're basically fighting external stagnation with internal hyperactivity.
But the other two responses are where it gets really fascinating. We usually think of flight as just hiding under the covers, but in a business crisis, Makowski notes that flight often looks like noble community service. It's the owner who says, hey, don't talk to me about business right now, and throws themselves entirely into national volunteering, which is incredibly noble, for sure, but it tragically leaves their actual business to wither and die. And then compare that to freeze. This is total deer-in-headlights paralysis. The owner can't take any action, not in the business, not in the community. They are simply stuck. Recognizing exactly which of these three states you're in right now is absolutely step one to taking your power back. Okay, moving on to part two, triage, where we map out your financial health. Once you know where your head is at, you have to get ruthlessly clinical with your data. You cannot treat a patient you haven't diagnosed. You need to brutally audit three core things. First up, cash flow. Look hard at what's incoming versus outgoing so you can spot your immediate shortages. Second, client contracts. Separate those paused accounts from the active ones to figure out exactly how much of your revenue stream is completely frozen. And third, expenses. Put everything into fixed or variable buckets and then cut the non-essentials immediately. I know it is literally terrifying to look at bad numbers during a crisis, but clarity is the only thing that will save you here.
Which brings us to the third phase, the treatment, and finding your temporary pivot.
With your financial map firmly in hand, the treatment phase requires a ton of creativity. The whole plan follows a straight line from gathering your data to executing a survival pivot. We just hit step one, mapping and review. Step two is an analysis of strengths. This means looking at your harsh new reality and asking, okay, what are we still uniquely good at right now? Step three is actually designing that temporary pivot based on those strengths. And step four, rigorous daily implementation of the new plan. Makowski has this brilliant piece of advice. He says, find the existing disadvantages caused by the situation and turn them into advantages. Think about civilian companies that temporarily swap their assembly lines to make emergency supplies during a disaster. Your business needs its own version of that. Like, if you run a high-end catering company that relies on massive weddings, can you temporarily pivot your industrial kitchens to crank out prepackaged emergency meals? You have to adapt whatever you produce to fit this strange, new market reality. And pulling off this pivot means taking some immediate, probably pretty uncomfortable tactical steps to protect your core. You might have to delay non-critical payments or grab emergency loans just to keep the lights on. You're definitely going to need to adjust employee roles. If you can't pay outside marketing agencies right now, well, can you bring that in-house? Can you quickly upskill your current staff on digital tools they need today? This whole phase is about aggressive, scrappy adaptation to preserve your team and your resources. Now for the final and honestly the most vital piece of this puzzle. Section 4, the rehab or the injured athlete strategy. This is where we shift focus to long-term survival. You need to treat your business exactly the way a top-tier sports doctor treats a wounded star player. The biggest danger here is something called business atrophy. This is the literal wasting away of your operational momentum, your client relationships, and your team skills because of sudden, complete inactivity. Remember that freeze response we talked about? If you freeze and stop doing everything, atrophy sets in unbelievably fast. Total inactivity, letting your business muscles waste away, is hands down the greatest enemy to your survival.
Think about modern sports medicine. When a pro athlete blows out their knee, doctors don't put them on bed rest for 6 months. Total rest actually guarantees muscle loss and makes it almost impossible to restart. They prescribe low-dose physical therapy. The exact same rule applies to your company. You can't just put the business into an induced coma and hope it magically wakes up sprinting when the crisis ends. You need low-dose activity. This maintains your organizational muscle memory, it keeps a baseline of momentum going, and it ensures you are ready the second the market finally thaws.
So the mandate here is so simple but so profound. You have to channel your energy into performing at least one productive task every single day to keep the vital signs of your business alive. Do something today, no matter how tiny it is. Call up a client whose account is frozen just to check in. Review one single line item on an expense report. Jot down one idea for a new service. It's not about operating at 100%. It is entirely about refusing to drop to zero. That consistent, low-dose activity is what guarantees your business doesn't just survive this freeze, but actually keeps the structural integrity to thrive later on. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a challenge. Look at your own operations right now, especially if you've been feeling the crushing weight of that freeze response. Decide what small action you are going to take today to start your rehab. What specific low-dose movement will you execute right now to keep your momentum alive? Because doing something, literally anything, is your very first step back to strength.